So, croeso cynnes I chi gyd, a very warm welcome to everybody who's watching this. It's my absolute pleasure to be here this afternoon with Chris Baker, who is a star in the careers world in Wales, although she's going to be very modest and bashful and look really uncomfortable as I say that, if I know Chris well enough by now. So the point of all these Meet the Member activities is to really give us a sense of digital community, given that we can't get together face to face for obvious reasons. What we're aiming to do at CDI Cymru Wales is to enable people to have a sense of others who are working in the community. So there's the opportunity then to go, I remember hearing Chris talking about this, or Steve that we had last time talking about FE, and knowing who they can go to as somebody they can talk to about a particular issue, and just to put some faces behind names in this world where we all sit screened safely behind our computer terminals. So Chris, lovely to see you today. Thank you ever so much for agreeing to do this. I'm going to start with a really simple question. How did you get into careers work?
It was through a temporary job that I saw advertised.
Often the way.
For an admin assistant for 6 months. And sort of 24 years later, here I am. I start off in admin and then as a careers assistant, and then worked in headquarters. And at the same time, I started an OU degree. That gave me a lot more confidence to think about my career and what I wanted to do. And it was to work with adults, I thought, but in teaching. But then I was at an event and I saw a careers advisor talking to a young person who'd been told that she was pretty much useless in school and at home, and is how he turned that around and drew out of her the things that she was good at. And all the bells, all the whistles just went off. And I decided there and then I wanted to become a careers advisor. So the next time they advertised, I applied.
So you've been with Careers Wales now for 24 years, woman and child, in various formats, in its various, going through its various different companies and then coming together as the Careers Wales we know now. Yeah. That must have been fascinating to watch and live through.
Yeah. And obviously I was going through changes. I think I've had 6 jobs while I've been in there. So it's been developing, same as the careers, because I was in Careers Wales Gwent, and obviously that moved on to obviously Careers Wales. So I've moved on with the company really. And yeah.
Fantastic. So moving on with the company, and obviously we're sitting in this wonderful world of COVID, where things have moved on apace again. We'll perhaps pick up on that a little later on to have to hear how that's affecting the work that you do. You mentioned a degree in the OU. Now, if my research is right, I think I know what you're going to say, but I'm going to let you say just in case.
My degree is in humanities with religious studies.
So what made you pick that? Although there is a connection, and is that something that's important to you as a theme in the work that you do? Is there a sort of a spiritual element in the way that you work, perhaps? Is there a connection there, do you see?
No, it's about people. I mean, I start off thinking I was going to do a history degree, and with the OU format, obviously you start off and you try something different every month. And I thought I love history, so I thought I was going to go down that route. And it was for my own development, it was for my own interest, and to show that I could do it to myself. But the taster they gave us really interested me. So I thought, I'll just try the second year and do a second year in religious studies. And then sort of 4 years later, there I was, I completed everything they had. And then we had to go back to history for my 3rd year. So,
wow. So real passion. Was it the storytelling part of that particularly attracted you, hearing the stories of people through that religious studies and how religion affects people's lives, or was it something different?
And the behaviours and everything else. And really, there is a tie-in really with what we do, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And my idea originally was to teach religious studies to adults. I had a placement, I had schools, and so on. But then obviously they advertised in Careers Wales for trainees, and I was like, yes.
Hands up, I'm up for that.
Yeah, and I was lucky enough my manager put me through the mill to make sure I was the right person, and because I was a bit of a joker, I'm a bit of a joker. I'm not sure they took me seriously initially, but I think I proved it, and I showed them that I really wanted it, and she put me through 2 interviews, not 1.
Wow. Just really testing your commitment and your mettle.
Really tested me, yeah.
So isn't that interesting, that concept of fun and a bit of a joker, and yet you work in an environment which doesn't necessarily sit comfortably alongside the word fun, does it? Or does it?
You need a very black sense of humour, a very dark sense of humour to work in there. I work in a couple of different prisons. So I work in an open prison where you see everybody with all sorts of issues, all sorts of barriers and all sorts of offences. And I work in a sex offenders prison as well. And that's very different, very, very different. And that's where the black sense of humour comes into it, I think, and enables you to work in a very difficult environment. While doing the best you possibly can as well at the same time. So yeah, I do think actually having a good sense of humour lends itself to working in that environment. And not just that, I think the men appreciate it as well, if you're professional at all times, but that you can have a laugh and a joke and empathise with them at the same time.
So it's a very different environment from any that most careers advisors experience. Most careers advisors would go, they'd go school or university like I did, or private practice like I do at the moment. And prison is not necessarily the first place that everybody thinks of as working in career guidance context. And I know that you've been recognised for your work in that, haven't you? Because what I should also say is that you are the current UK Career Coach Careers Advisor of the Year for the CDI from the Career Development Awards. And I can see that little twitch on your face of, yeah, that was me. And I know what you're getting at. I was very privileged to win the same thing. So I understand that feeling of, yes, it was me. And were they real? Did they mean it? And of course they did. And I just wondered if you'd be able to share with us a little bit of what it's like working in that different environment than working in somewhere, I'm going to use the word more conventional, more usual in terms of career guidance work. So what's a day in the life like for you? I mean, obviously we've got COVID, so it's a bit of a day in a different life, but give us a flavour of what it's like generally.
Generally, it's full on. It's very much full on. So I start with on a Wednesday morning and I'm in first thing, and by 8:30 I've usually got a room full of men who've just come into the prison, and I introduce myself and the world of careers wells and working wells, and basically we talk about what we can do for them, what I can do for them, how I'm there to help them, basically not there to tell them what to do but to help them. And we talk about planning and how important it is to start planning as they come into prison, not just at the end of their sentences. And we talk about using the justice's time and hopefully their courses and anything else they can access to progress themselves whilst they're in prison.
And what's the typical term that somebody would be serving that you're supporting there? Is it a short stay or is it a longer? Obviously with some of the sex offenders, probably slightly longer, I'd have thought, if you're able to share that information.
To be honest, if we're talking about the open prison, it can be absolutely anything. They could have been in 30 years and just worked their way through to a Cat D. There's only one Cat D open prison in Wales, and it's the one I work in. So you can have the whole gambit of offences, from sexual offences in there to murderers to anything, to somebody who hasn't paid a TV licence. So you've got, in terms of time in prison, it could be absolutely anything. You've got people with indefinite sentences, but are sort of being geared up for leaving. So they could have they could have spent a long time in the system. So they've had quite often, no labour market information, no idea what's going on outside, no idea what the skill set is, no idea what they can do. And that's our job, isn't it? That's pure guidance, isn't it? That's just pure guidance, yeah. And the same with sex offenders, actually, because they come into prison and quite often they can't go back to the jobs that they used to do. So it's looking at transferable and specific skills and looking at, what motivates them. We'll have to look at the convictions as well, because that has a big impact on what they can do in terms of careers. And we have to get them to admit what their licence conditions are, so we can work within the confines of that as well, to try and generate ideas, because common sense says if they like what they do, if they enjoy what they do, if they can progress with what they do, they're more likely to be successful and not come back in.
Absolutely. So that's such a broad range, isn't it? I mean, if you're working in a school or university, you've got a start, a middle and an end. You've got this open experience, and everybody, I presume, from sort of gardener, mechanic, that sort of role, through to white collar criminals as well? Or is there a particular profile that you see more often? Is it just totally mixed?
Totally mixed, from people who own their own businesses to I don't know, people from working abroad in finance, people who've had property development companies, lot of drug substance misuse users, and obviously sellers. There's a lot of that goes on. It just could be absolutely anybody. I mean, I think there's an assumption that people that come into prison are sort of low, have got low education levels.
It's not true, is it?
It's really not true. No. We've got absolutely everything, and that's what makes my job interesting, because I actually don't know what's coming in my door next. Whereas if you work in education, you've got a fair idea what's coming through your door. Yeah. You don't know people's barriers before they come through your door, but you've got a fair idea, sort of, somebody's going into training, somebody's going into education, somebody's going into employment. With me, I've got absolutely no idea before they come through my door.
So clearly variety is important to you then.
It actually is really, really important to me. It actually makes me enjoy I always enjoy my job, and I'm hoping that comes across as well. But I'll also throw myself 100% into what I do as well, because I get the autonomy to try different things. I hope Patty's not listening to this, but anyway, I do get the autonomy to try different things, and that makes my job and my day interesting as well. I will always try and press as many buttons as I can to make things happen for people, to put things in place for people.
So you've got into the prison, you've had your group of gentlemen who've just recently arrived in.
Mm-hmm.
What happens then?
What happens then? It's usually they will, when I've seen them, when they've come in, they usually choose to, and I like that, they choose to see me afterwards, and they choose a full guidance session. And then they'll usually, and that guidance session will obviously help us then to plan what they need to do to move forward. And that could be anything from really targeted CVs to disclosures for potential employers, to actually doing job search, to looking at labour market information. And I usually am able to build a good rapport with them, and they'll just keep popping back, get me to check their CVs over, ask me to put, to see if there's any jobs out there, ask me to talk to certain people for them, and we get on like that, really. And then sometimes I have contact with them when they get out as well, if they still need my assistance.
I was going to ask you about that, actually. I was going to say, do you get much in that way of the thing that we all love, isn't it? That sort of extra bit of job satisfaction when you get a little note, or you bump into somebody and say, hey, by the way, thanks for that, I managed to get into this, or I'm now doing that. Do you get much of that sort of thing, given the context?
Yeah. If to myself, obviously to me, they don't tend to contact careers well and say, well, what a job Christine's done. But I do, especially if I follow up on something I promised to do as they're going out the door, because sometimes I don't see them right until the end of their sentence. It's a rush job then to try and get what I can do and then signpost them on. I do get thank yous, and that's it. That's great. That's my buzz. So, but obviously, if they get into employment or getting into university or getting to college, that's fantastic.
A positive destination. Interesting. As you were talking, I was just thinking, I know that the justice system has changed quite significantly over the last years, hasn't it? It's got much more of a restorative justice style and approach. I'm not quite sure how long you've been working in this context, but have you seen much change, given that change in the whole legislature itself?
No.
No. Okay. Because I'm not sure how long you've been actually working in this environment yet.
I've been working in it on and off for about 10 years.
10 years, okay. But you haven't seen restorative justice coming through particularly, or?
Yeah, there's a lot of programs out there, and there's a lot of things that are going on, and I'm hoping it's going to get bigger and better. But also there's been cuts as well, isn't there, within the justice system. So a lot of courses, a lot of even simple things have been hard to get hold of. Simple CSCS card, that's all they need. They've been out the job market, that's all they need is £150, and that's not available to them. I mean, it is now, but it's been hard work to get anything like that, to keep asking those questions. A food hygiene certificate, getting that in place,
I suppose they're too old for going to help with places like Prince's Trust, Cymru, which does that sort of thing for people up to 30, but doesn't do it for older workers potentially. On a case-by-case basis.
On a case-by-case basis. as you said. There's, you know, obviously looking at the labour, some of the things that are on offer don't tie in with labour market demands, especially now, and that's quite important. Obviously, the more, you know, it ties in with that, there's more chance of employment opportunities for them. I've been pushing sort of HGV for quite a few years now, because obviously a demand and a shortage, and that's, but the men in most instances have to pay for that themselves, and that's a lot of money to find. So it would be nice if there, you know, there was more in terms of vocational training for the men, things that will make a difference as they go out the door, rather than relying on people or organisations who do provide these things, but maybe have to jump through a few hoops to get them. They need it in their pocket as they're going out, because the motivation's high.
Yeah,
it's really high. Yeah, cycle of change in the motivation, and they're accepting help. But once that point has passed and things start dipping and
downward spiral.
And you're back to where you started. There's a point. There's a point where there should be help. I'm not saying everything should be thrown at them, but the simple things that should be put in place, simple things that would help, that makes men feel like they're getting somewhere, and that cycle goes in the right way, rather than go back to where they started from.
What I loved about that little conversation there, that snippet there, was just the ease with which you dropped in a little bit of the theory of guidance, a little bit of motivational interviewing. Once they get to that point, the motivation's high, and then it goes down. I thought that was absolutely lovely, and I can see why. Just even talking to you, just listening and seeing and hearing the enthusiasm, Chris, I can absolutely see why you won the CDI award this year. Absolutely. You're going to blush again. I'm not going to let you do that. What I want you to do, though, is I just want you to tell us a little bit about, if you could, about the experience, and just let's hear that story. So what happened, the whole sort of process from nomination through?
The nomination was a bit of a surprise. I was told I was being nominated. So obviously I'm like, no.
Then you went, oh, all right then.
Yeah, and then you do as you're told, and so that came. No, it didn't. So I was nominated, and it was nice because it came from the men. We've actually, I forgot to say that we've actually employed 4 prisoners in Careers Wales, or 4 ex-offenders, but we took them on while they were in prison. And it came from me writing a nice email, you know, stating it, putting a case to our managers and our directors as to why we should do that. And in fairness to them, they jumped straight on board with it. And we started taking people, some of my customers, some of my clients on straight away. And my nomination, I believe, was backed up with what they said, really, about how I'd impacted on their career, and how things had changed for them, in terms of obviously having money in the pocket, obviously accommodation, having a job, gaining new skills, gaining new qualifications. And that's what really it's about. We should be giving people opportunities. Not everybody will take it, but those men did, and they're still doing quite well. So yeah,
and that's why, of course, your nomination went forward, and that's, of course, why you ended up winning, because you were. The trouble with awards is when people nominate themselves. Sometimes that can be a little bit over-egged, and there's nothing wrong, you know, in nominating yourself if you choose to. But from my perspective, there's nothing better than having somebody else who will stand up for you and say, this person has changed my life. They've made a real difference. They've really helped. So you got your shortlisted email.
Yes.
And how was that? Was that a bit of a magic moment? Or a moment?
It was a bit of that. It was a bit like that. But actually, I was really pleased, because what I do is a little bit niche in the careers world. What you know, our project consists of 5 advisors in Wales, one in each prison, basically. And getting that nomination, it felt good, because it's just a little bit of affirmation. It's just recognising what we do and what difference we can make. All of us make, you know, as careers advisors, we all make a difference. But, you know, I think what we do makes quite a large difference, to quite a lot of people, considering we're only a small amount of advisors.
And society. And society, of course, because if you can help somebody get back into a more normal way of living in society, then the cost of society is much less. And that person has their own personal pride back and a future again. Yeah, and it's got to be good for everyone.
Yeah, the nice thing was the men were fighting amongst themselves to actually come with me to the award ceremony, and we were actually,
How fabulous was that? I'm ever so sorry I wasn't able to be there. I came down with some dreadful throat bug, and if you and I know you'll remember, it was the week before coronavirus lockdown hit, I think, wasn't it? About a week, 10 days beforehand, very, very close to it anyway. And I was sitting there going, and we'd had this email around, hadn't we, going, if you're not well, please don't come. If you have a cold, a temperature, a cough, whatever, and I'm thinking, I'm losing my voice here, I've got a cough, I've got a cold, I can't go. Because I was going to be on the Welsh table, clearly. And unfortunately couldn't go. So I spent the entire evening sitting on the sofa, desperately following tweets to find out what was going on, and having conversations through WhatsApp with people on Facebook, with people I knew in the room, going, where are we now? Are they up yet? Are they up yet? So I was jumping around the room, screaming silently, I have to say, when I saw your name come up. What was that moment like?
It was strange because I read the wrong names at first, but
oh.
But yeah, it was the table sort of exploded, and so everybody was jumping up, and I was like shaking. But it was amazing, and everybody was very kind when I went up to get the award, and we had a little celebration afterwards as well. And
I know Nikki was delighted, your chief exec, wasn't she? Because I had a message from her going, we won again, because you won the year before as well with another cash going, yes, get in Wales.
And it was and Jess from Welsh Government was there, and she was very pleased as well. So
good, always good.
And Dan was with me as well, and obviously some friends and things, and that was wonderful. So yeah, we had a little celebration after, and I was talking to people from obviously Career Scotland and everywhere else, and that was a really nice experience as well, because obviously I've always worked in Wales. Just to see everybody there was amazing, and to see all the good work that people are doing, and work in primary schools and all sorts. It's the whole raft of what we do is amazing.
So what would you say to somebody who's thinking about going for one of the awards, or being persuaded to, like you were? What would you say to them? What words of advice would you give them?
Enjoy it. It's a wonderful experience, and to have your work highlighted as good practice, it is a once in a lifetime event, really. Although we'll be aiming for next year. No, not really.
I hope somebody from Careers Wales is. No, there's the gauntlet thrown down. Or somewhere from somebody in Wales. We need another Welsh win.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a wonderful experience, and to have people say, to talk about your work, to acknowledge your work, it's just one of those things. Just once in a while, it's nice to have that, and to have that award. It's on my mantelpiece. It's great, and I would definitely recommend doing it and going forward for it, independent of working for a company. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. What's next for you, do you think, in terms of development, challenge, new experience? Because we are career specialists, so sometimes we do need to do our own career planning, and I suspect we're all very bad at that, because we're so busy worrying about other people, so we maybe don't put quite as much emphasis, although obviously on the professional register we do our 25-hour CPD. But it's that sort of, what's the next step for you? Or is it you're happy where you are?
It's a hard one, because I've actually I've gone through the first management training with my company, but I love what I do. Yeah. So I've got a struggle in terms of, do I wait for my ideal job, which would involve prisons, and making, developing our services, seeing the way forward. Because I also work in youth offending, and I worked in probation for many years as well. So, we're developing at the moment, but, could I add to that? I don't know. Are they going to create a job for me? I don't think so. But yeah, so that'll be my ideal job. But obviously, then maybe I need to think about other areas within Careers Wales that would give me the same sort of fulfillment that I get from my current role.
I think that's the clue, isn't it? It's where do I get the fulfillment from? Chris, I've had an absolute pleasurable time this afternoon having a conversation with you. I hope you've enjoyed it too, and I hope it's brought back some of those wonderful memories of just holding that trophy and going. That's the smile. Thank you ever so much, and you stay safe and well despite current times. Keep doing the fantastic work you're doing. Thank you. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Thank you. Diolch.